It was May of the year 70 CE. The sun rose red over Jerusalem. Smoke already hung above the city, thin, gray, and bitter. For 7 months it had been surrounded. By now, hunger was the loudest sound inside the walls. From the north, the legions of Rome waited. 5th, 10th, and 15th, the iron claws of an empire. Their commander, Titus Flavius Vespasianus, did not rush. He preferred cities to surrender themselves. But this one would not. Behind its stone walls stood zealots, priests, and families, all believing that God would not let his city fall. They were wrong. By midday, Roman siege engines rolled forward, massive catapults built from cedar and bronze. Stones as heavy as oxen thundered through the sky. Every impact shook the hill like an earthquake. Inside, defenders fired arrows from rooftops. Children filled jars with pitch and flame. It was not a battle anymore. It was a slow burning. By the 3rd day, the smell of death replaced the smell of smoke. Cisterns ran dry. Men fought over the last drops of water. At night, the fire on the walls lit the valleys below, a crown of flame around the mountain, and still the people prayed. From his command tent, Titus watched the city burn. He ordered no assault that night. He wanted the fire to do his work. The next morning, the wind shifted east. Embers carried into the temple courtyards. A soldier, no one remembers his name, threw a torch through a window. The curtains caught first, then the cedar panels, then everything. The Temple of Jerusalem, the heart of the city, became a pillar of fire. Gold from its ceiling melted and ran like rivers between the stones. Those who saw it said the glow was like daylight, even at midnight. For 7 days and 7 nights the city burned. Not from oil nor from wood, but from faith itself. When the smoke finally cleared, nothing stood but ash and stone. A city that had called itself eternal, erased in a week. And somewhere beneath the ruins, buried under the weight of centuries, the foundation stone remained, untouched, waiting. When the fire finally began to die, the wind carried the ash beyond the city walls. The once white stones of Jerusalem were now black. Even the air tasted like burnt metal. Among the ruins, the survivors moved like shadows, silent, slow, hollow-eyed. No one spoke. There were no prayers left, only the sound of sandals scraping through soot. A group of priests, stripped of their robes, climbed the steps that no longer led anywhere. In their hands they carried what little remained, fragments of scrolls, half-burned and brittle, wrapped in cloth that still smelled of smoke. They knew they could not save the city, but perhaps they could save its memory. Below the Temple Mount, they found a passage, one known only to them. It led into the dark beneath the foundation stone. For generations, it had been whispered that something slept there. Something older than the temple itself. A mark, a relic, a warning. By torchlight, they walked deeper. The air grew thick, damp, and heavy with silence. When they reached the final chamber, they stopped. The walls were carved with words no one alive could fully read, and in the center lay a block of stone, smooth and cold, scorched but unbroken. They placed the fragments of the scrolls inside a bronze chest, sealed it with pitch, and lowered it beside the stone. One of them, the eldest, pressed his hand against the surface. The skin on his palm hissed, not from heat, but from something else, something alive. He whispered, "When men bury what is sacred, the fire will return." The others did not understand. They sealed the passage behind them. They thought they were hiding history. They did not know they were preserving a curse. Outside, the Romans began to dig. They gathered the melted gold from between the stones, stacked the idols and treasures, and marched away. By nightfall, the mountain was quiet again. Only the glow from the coals remained, and beneath them, the buried heart of a city still burning in silence. Years later, when the rains came, the ashes washed into the valleys. The soil turned dark and fertile. Grass grew where bodies had fallen. But the mountain never grew green again. They called it Moriah, the hill that remembers fire. Years passed, then centuries. Where the temple once stood, Rome built something else, a monument to victory. They called it Aelia Capitolina, marble streets, statues of their gods, and on the mount, a shrine to Jupiter, the conqueror of thunder. But below that marble, the old tunnels remained, buried, sealed, forgotten. The priests who once hid the chest were long gone, yet the air below the mountain still felt warm, as if something continued to breathe beneath the stone. When the empire split, new faiths rose. Crosses replaced eagles, priests replaced senators. But the mountain never changed. Byzantine rulers built churches there. They called it holy, but the word holy had begun to mean different things. Some prayed to the past, others prayed to erase it. Then, in the year 691, builders climbed the mount once more. New hands, new empire. They laid gold over stone, and the sun itself seemed to bow to the dome they raised, the Dome of the Rock, a name that meant nothing and everything. Inside it, they left the foundation stone untouched, polished, clean, silent. But those who stood close said they could hear it hum, a sound like breath behind a wall. No one dared to touch it. They built a railing around it instead, so that men could look, but not cross. For the fire was buried again, and the mountain waited once more. The year 1099, the First Crusade, 100,000 men from the west marched under crosses, and Jerusalem burned again. For a week, the city echoed with screams, steel, and prayer. Smoke from the Temple Mount rose high into the sky, as if the mountain remembered how to bleed. When the fighting stopped, the knights entered the dome. They saw the stone, smooth, ancient, cold to the touch. They called it Templum Domini, the Temple of the Lord, and they built their own church beside it. They believed it was holy. But holiness, they learned, is not a gift. It's a warning. One night, his name lost to time, recorded in his journal that the stone glowed faintly one night, as if lit from beneath. He wrote, "It was not fire nor light, but something that remembered both." The journal vanished centuries later, but the words survived, whispered by those who feared the mountain more than they revered it. Every empire that claimed Jerusalem built something over that stone. Every empire that left it untouched, as if it could not be destroyed, as if it would not allow it. 2,000 years after the first fire, Jerusalem burned again. Tanks replaced chariots, airplanes replaced catapults. But the smoke looked the same. When the old city fell in 1948, the dome trembled but did not break. For 19 years, it stood divided between two nations, two faiths, two halves of a promise. In 1967, the mountain once again became the center of the storm. Shells fell, dust filled the sky, and deep beneath the stone, something cracked. An archaeologist, his name was David Ben-Ami, recorded strange readings under the mount. Heat fluctuations, vibrations, unexplained bursts of energy. He wrote in his notebook, "Under the stone, something stirs." That night the city shook. not from bombs but from something older. When he returned to the tunnel days later, he found a faint burn ring on the wall, the exact size of a human hand. He sealed the passage and he never spoke of it again. But in his final note he wrote one sentence: "The fire never left." Decades passed. The wars ended. Tourists filled the streets where armies once bled, but the mountain remained quiet. Too quiet. In 2012, a team of researchers mapped the bedrock beneath the dome. Their instruments detected a hollow space, a void exactly beneath the foundation stone. When they drilled a microsensor through the limestone, it melted. They stopped the test. The data was sealed. No report was ever published. Some say it was an equipment failure. Others say it was something else. A local worker claimed he saw light under the floor that night, not electric, not fire, something in between. He said it flickered like a heartbeat, and then it was gone. Now, every year, pilgrims come to the mount to pray. They do not see the burn marks. They do not feel the warmth in the air. But it's there, waiting. When men bury the sacred, the fire will return. And when it does, it will not stop at the mountain.